Hello and welcome to the Spooky Chris podcast. I am Spooky Chris. My name is Chris Ringler. I am an author, blogger, reviewer, filmmaker, and general ne'er-do-well. Hello and welcome to Valentine's Day. This is not a Valentine's episode, unfortunately. I guess it's my version of one. I thought I would do a podcast about kind of my love for found footage films, which I have talked about at length in blogs and in reviews, because especially of late, I find myself watching a lot of found footage films, much to my chagrin, as told by the one I watched today, which was I knew going in was going to be terrible. I had watched the trailer for it, and it looked bad. And I was like, I'm not going to waste my time. Well, I decided instead to hate watch it, and I did. I'm going to actually throw a review up, so I won't go on and on about it. But yeah, it's a prime example of what's wrong with found footage as a subgenre, and that's one of the things that fascinates me about the subgenre, because it is, it's one of the many offshoots of the big tree of horror. And it, like all of them, there was a fad. So there was a kind of literal glut of found footage films for a while, and now you'll still get them for reasons I'll kind of go into, but you don't get them as often as you did, say 15, 20 years ago. But it's like every other fad. All these things are fad-ish. So you get, vampires movies are fad-ish, and anytime there is a property that hits that really kind of does well, usually in a surprising fashion. It's like alien movies and that kind of thing. All of these other scripts that are floating out there or filmmakers out there will immediately go, what do we have like that? We need a movie like ABC. And so you see a ton of properties like that. You see it a lot in movies in general, when, like if there's a musical that does well, then all of a sudden you're going to see a ton of musicals pop up. And thinking on it, a lot of it are scripts that are already out there, or properties or ideas that are out there and just haven't been picked up or haven't been taken as seriously at the time as they are in reconsideration, because there's a perceived market for it. Gosh, who knows how many dozens of superhero-ish movies and comic. I mean, you're seeing kind of lesser-known comic companies trying to get their own cinematic universes out there, because of what Marvel has done, and in a lesser degree what DC has done, and has shown that there is still an interest in it. So like all fads and all subgenres, people get tired of it, and you kind of get sick of seeing quote unquote the same thing over and over again. And it makes sense. We like familiarity, and we like things that are kind of similar to other things and this and that. But we also do like things that are different, and we don't want to see the same thing over and over again. So when it comes from me, I fell in love with the subgenre because it really kind of it's in its own way. It's kind of always been around. You've had these epistolary these these kind of narratives that are quote unquote found-ish, kind of diary style, as far back as Dracula. Just the idea you're finding the journal or someone has left behind. Lovecraft's work it kind of feels like that, where it's very much someone kind of confessing the horrors that they've seen, and explaining that there is no way they can explain them. Telling you that it's unexplainable because I can barely perceive what I experienced. So these kind of stories have been around for forever. When you really, really go back, and this is kind of why I love this style so much, is that they take their power from the campfire stories that we told as kids, and that has been around for forever. The notion of the heart of storytelling, of relaying incidents that happened. In the stories of other people, like I heard that once in these woods there was a man who lived with his family. These kind of things, and we tell these still to to one another and to our friends, and we still do that. When you say, "Gosh, you know what? I heard that house down the street, somebody's killed there." Yep, totally heard about it. Yeah, no, a friend of a friend heard about it. Like that's that kind of storytelling. It's the idea of it's a kind of a found narrative, in that it's not always our narrative. Many of the found footage films, it is. I mean, that's what makes it, and that's what kind of is a frustrating kind of a thing for me, is that the whole point is that it's quote unquote found. You get a lot of, there's offshoots too where they're they call them mockumentaries, and it's the films, and I kind of really like those, but they get lumped into found footage, and it's not fair, but it's also not fair to call them mockumentaries, because that implies that it's mocking something, and it's not. It's using a faux documentary style. The film, oh my gosh, oh heavens to Betsy, I was going to make a list of movies, and I can't think of this one now. There is a quote unquote found footage movie, came out a few years ago, Lake Mungo, and that is more along the, and I'm gonna use a lot of air quotes, the quote unquote mockumentary. It's along those lines more, in that it is portrayed as if it is a kind of a documentary. It's not someone found this footage. It is someone made this footage, and it is being portrayed as if it was a documentary. They're not mocking. I mean, if you've seen Lake Mungo, they are not mocking anything. It is a very melancholic film, and there's not anything being mocked in it. So calling it a mockumentary feels a little disingenuous, and it doesn't feel fair. But I get the idea, in that it is not a documentary, so it's a quote unquote mockumentary, like a mock tale. It is not, it's not a real documentary. It is portraying itself as a documentary. So I think that's what that means. It's just weird because it also, they throw that on stuff like This Is Spinal Tap, which is a mockumentary in more ways than one, because it's mocking the kind of rock star lifestyle, in that sort of rock star kind of like expose journalism and everything. But yeah, it's that style of story has been around, forever-ish. You go back to the film Peeping Tom from the 60s, and that is done POV style, where it is a man who films himself murdering women. And that is, I can't remember if the whole thing, it's not the whole thing, it can't be, but like much of it is POV style. Gosh, even the remake of Maniac has that kind of an aspect, because it's first person. You don't really get a lot of first person movies that are not quote unquote, found footage. It's just not kind of how they do them generally. It's kind of like telling stories in the second person, where it's you go to the store, you buy milk, that kind of a thing. It's not a common practice, because it's a little more challenging. And a first person movie, it's just, there are not a lot of them, to say the least, especially again in this modern age, that are not kind of in the found footage realm. But that kind of is a cousin to these kind of films. As a million people have said 1,000 times, Cannibal Holocaust is a progenitor to all of to Blair Witch and all of those kind of films. It's the idea of, for those who haven't seen it, because it's, it's a funny movie because I love it and hate it at the same time, which I think is fair. It is a bunch of people go into the jungles trying to find cannibals, the kind of stereotypical cannibals that we all, when we think of cannibals, those kind of folks that are tribes and they eat their enemies and this and that. And they went to go document them, and they disappeared. And the film is basically all of, like, the search for them, and in not finding them, they find their camera equipment and just kind of some other kind of things that they left behind. And then we see what happened to them through their film, through their things that they've filmed. And it's a fascinating movie, and one of the reasons it's I really like it, and why it kind of has some power, is that it condemns the people themselves. It's really interesting because they basically went in the jungle and they were looking for cannibals. They were looking for these this tribe of cannibals, and they find this tribe that's very peaceful and very just kind of not. They don't do that anymore. They just So these people manufacture cannibals and kind of like do these things to make it look as if they are, and in so doing make them into the monsters that they believed they were. Really, really, and again, it's a brutal movie. It's the and again, for anyone who may not know, it's notorious, like a lot of those. Unfortunately, it's notorious for animal brutality. And which the good thing is the DVD / Blu-ray / whatever lets you bypass that, but it doesn't make it not exist. So it's definitely one that's worthy of a lot of discussion for a lot of reasons. But that is kind of a and when Blair Witch came out, you had a lot of the kind of the haters come out and like, well, that's just ripping off Cannibal Holocaust. And there's another movie at the time. Oh my gosh. And I do forget the name of this one. I saw it at the time, and it was funny because it's one of those movies, and again, like, you get this in Hollywood, that movies that are similar in a lot of ways that will make it through production about the same time and come out near to the same time. And it was about the Jersey Devil, and it was very similar-ish to Blair Witch, but I mean, I'm be real honest, I didn't like it, and it didn't have the same power, didn't have the same effect. They blew all the goodwill and I wish I could remember the darn name of it. They blew all the goodwill they build in the film because it's really interesting until the climax and the final act, and then you kind of finally find out what's what, and you're like, well, that's what you're doing. Well, okay, that's a choice. And I know there are people that love it, and again, like, there's folks that still insist that Blair Witch ripped it off, and even if the folks behind Blair Witch were inspired by it, what they did is not the same thing. And I mean, gosh, I don't even know how necessarily ethical what they did was, when you kind of see how they filmed it, like sending these folks into the woods. And just kind of pointing them in a direction, and then with like, hey, here's some cues and this and that, and we're gonna leave you supplies, and then horrifying them at times without them really knowing. Like, there's a lot of that is it's very kind of gray area, like, not necessarily how you want to treat your cast, but it worked. And again, so getting back to it, Blair Witch is what made me fall in love with these kind of films. I saw Blair Witch, a story I've told a million times on this podcast. I can't remember if I've talked about found footage on one of these podcasts or not. My memory is just terrible. What can I say? But I've talked about it in our other the podcast. Some friends and I have called the Ghoulcast. But I saw a week before it went national. I had been following it in the nerd, geek movie geek blogs since Sundance, when there was a big to do about it. So for months and months and months, because it didn't come out until the summer. And I went with a bunch of friends, and like I say, it was the week before it went national. We saw a midnight screening. I had to be up at 5 or 6 the next morning to leave to go on a vacation to Florida. And we saw it with a packed house, and it was dead silence through the whole movie. And it was a movie that just you want to talk about afterwards. I saw it again the week afterward on a date, and we watched the afterwards. We watched the fake the fake documentary Sci-Fi Channel had put out that was kind of about the whole Blair Witch thing. Treating it as if like, no, these people really did disappear and this happened, and it was great. And it was there's so much to what made that special, Blair Witch, and that's why it's one of my favorite movies. And there's so much, there's the movie itself, and then there is like it seems that's a movie that you could almost teach a class on, because there was so much to it. Because there was the movie, there was a website that supported it that was pictures, and it was kind of like journal entries and found items, like all of the supporting stuff that just kind of got you even more, deeply into that story and that legend. And then there were, there was, I think they made three total between Blair Witch and Blair Witch 2. They made three total fake documentaries about the Blair Witch and the Burkittsville 7, which those are the kids that were killed in the context of the history. And then there was one about what really happened with the Blair Witch 2 story, with those people, and just really interesting stuff. And they put so much work into building this mythology, and that's why, one of the many reasons. Because again, it goes back to the Campfire Tales thing for me. I love found footage films, that style of film, because it captures kind of the storytelling of sitting around a campfire, where you fill in so much with your imagination, and you kind of, you're forced into it. You are forced into the movie with the people, whether you like it or not, because it is through a camera. It's first person. You are there, and there's that immediacy can be so powerful and so claustrophobic, which you see in the Blair Witch, and the Blair Witch Project, and even the sequel, The Blair Witch, because there are moments where it's like you are trapped with them, and stuff is hitting the fan, and there's nothing you can do, and it's great. That's how powerful those movies can be. I love it. The idea of the kind of myth making is great. One of the neat things about the subgenre is that, and I think it stinks, because much like everything else, people are very much black or white. Like, I hate superhero movies. Well, there's lots of. I mean, which ones do you hate? Like, there's a whole wide range. James Gunn made the movie Super, which is a very dark comedy about a quote unquote superhero, and it's not at all like regular superhero movies. Well, I hate it. Why? It's about superhero. There's all kinds of. That's the cool thing about superhero stuff, is that, much like, again, found footage, you can kind of tell whatever story you want. You're just using the structure of superheroes. Found footage uses the structure of either a faux documentary, which are my preference, or someone creating a record, we'll say, of something that is happening. I love both styles, and there's great examples of both styles. It's just things get a little more tenuous with the personal documentation, because and you start getting into the weeds on that, because, and that's where we go back to I think the faux documentaries work a little better for me, because I like the idea, and it seems more plausible. The idea that, like, we found these documents, this footage, this whatever. We have gone through it. we are presenting it to you, whatever that means. And it's plausible again because so much, especially now, because we are in a time where it's not even a matter of we deserve to know as much as people are just trying to create content. So much is starting to come out, and so much is released. It's to fill voids. Like we have this perceived void. It's like the silence between words when you're speaking with someone, where you and I have this. God knows I do, where you feel the need to keep speaking, because you want to fill that silence, because it just drives you crazy, because there's too much. It's too wide and too long and too deep, and you're like, what? I can't let this silence last. So we feel like that there's always this need to have content. My wife worked as a journalist for many years, and the place she worked, the the way they had their website, and in turn kind of their Twitter feed and everything else, it was considered and called a river. Like that style is it's a river, and you're always trying to keep the river full of things, news. So news items were like just pushed. Like you had to get, like, you there's a story, get it, write it, publish it. The days of, okay, there's the news story, let's look into it, let's do some interviews, let's do some investigation, let's just, like, in doing a bigger piece, is not there. I'm sure, for some papers it is, for some outlets it is. In this case, it was not. It was just a matter of you're filling the river, and if they wanted, they could just circle back and kind of do, as it were, sequels, follow-up stories, for the stories that were really hitting and were really kind of making an impact. So we're at a point where everything, to varying degrees. That's why you're seeing so many movies getting made, and so much like stuff. That's why, in ways, I see why there's still so many found footage movies coming out. Because really, when you think about it, with the democratization of kind of filmmaking, I mean, you can make movies literally on your phone, and some phones have editing software and even like pre-programmed music cues that you can use. I have done that to make little silly promo vids for my own little books and stuff using just my phone. So you could literally, if you can get a decent enough phone, make your own movie and then put it out if it reaches, certain criteria, lengths, and blah blah blah, and you find outlets. So almost anybody can make these now, which is, good and bad. Much like self-publishing, you're going to get a lot of crap and people just kind of putting out whatever without any kind of real introspection or retrospection. They're just kind of dumping things out. But you're also getting a lot of new voices and new stories and new ideas. But found footage is so powerful in that way because anyone can make it, and it can be made so inexpensively and so, I don't know, quickly, but like, you can kind of do a quick turnaround. A brilliant example in these cases is the movie Leaving DC. One of those, and it was a weird one. That's why I still take chances on movies I've never heard of or don't know what the heck they are. Because it was a movie I'd never even heard of, and I saw just a terrible image, and it was streaming on, I think, Amazon. And I watched the trailer, and I'm like, man, I'll give it a chance. I loved it. And it is exactly what is right about that kind of Poverty Row kind of found footage filmmaking. And I don't mean that in a denigrating way. It's the idea that they didn't have to, as far as you can tell, invest a ton of money into this. It is just shy of a one-man show. Like, there's a couple other actors, I think, in it, at least one other one. And it's mainly on one person's shoulders. So then it's, just a responsibility of the writing and how you film it and how you put it all together. And it holds together well as a kind of a found footage film. Like, again, to really, really go back, so many of these folks kind of lose sight of the fact that it's found. So if you are showing, there shouldn't there unless you're going to say, oh well, this footage, and I get too few movies. We'll go too few movies. Go to the effort of, this was found by XYZ, and this is being put out by ABC, blah blah blah, because they'll have movie scores. even if it's just sounds like whoa, like soundscapes. That's like that didn't happen. Like I don't go around with in my day to day life with a soundtrack as much as I wish I did. And then they'll have camera angles that don't fit what they're doing, or they'll have kind of the nonsense. And that one I watched today did this in the beginning of it, where it's like you're carrying a camera, and you're filming everything, and there's no reason to, but you're filming everything. And even when you're running and scared, you are filming everything. The Wise movies find reasons like, well, they are still filming because of this reason, or this is why, or this. Like Blair Witch, she still was filming because, like, as they say to Heather, you're still making movies. She couldn't stop. Like, and it became a defense mechanism almost. And I think when things got their worst, it was at that point kind of I want a record of what happens to us, so they don't just think we're gone. And so they don't just and that happens in real life. You'll hear of plane crashes or things, terrible incidents where people call their loved ones and just to say goodbye because they don't want to be forgotten and they want their last words heard. So there's those kind of reasons, but so often these movies are just filming to film. Like, it's funny, my wife and I will watch these kind of ghost videos on YouTube, and 99.999% of them are not even just good fakes, but bad fakes. We watched one the other day, and it's someone filming, and they're filming, and they film their hand, and the hand goes to the door, and they turn the doorknob, and then they go up, and they just happen to catch the sight of something, and then over, and then there's something else. It's a movie. People are making movies, because that's not how you would, to me, logically, that's not how you shoot these things. If I'm using it to see through, if I'm using it as a light, whatever, I'm like, I'm aiming it right where I'm looking. If I know where the door handle is, I don't need to look where the door handle is and film myself turning a knob. I'm looking straight ahead because I don't want something to get me. And it's base logic like that is so often ignored in these movies, and that is such a damning thing. Because on one hand, these are terribly easy movies to make, deceptively so. Whereas you can add a ton of stuff, like Blair Witch. They spent, and when you look into the budget stuff, $75,000. No, was it $250,000? Like a ton of money on a soundscape that they reduced, and it was the idea it was nature, like bugs and birds and this and that and the wind, and they reduced it so to nothing because when the witch was, when they're fully in the witch's grasp, you hear nothing because you are in her world. So you can put a lot of work into it, and it's not even to say like, oh well, these are just easy, you can knock these off in a weekend and you're gonna have big. No, it's not to say that at all, but it's to say that initially they can be very, very easy to make, quote unquote. And even that stuff, like people mail it in. I watched one the other day, and it had, and so many of these, they start out with good ideas. And it was, this wife who is sleepwalking, and they're trying to figure out why, so they put cameras everywhere. And again, like there's ways to do so much of this now, in the last few years, because you can get these security cameras so inexpensively and put them everywhere, and you can always be filming to varying degrees. And now we have, again, phones on us, and cameras are smaller and everything else. You can always kind of be filming. You just have to have reason why. Like, why are you still filming? Why, when someone is mortally wounded and you're still filming them, and you're not dropping this camera or whatever, why are you not helping them? But so they're filming everything, and they're kind of like trying to make a documentary to see, to find out why this is happening, and it turns out it's connected to an alien invasion, and blah blah blah. So it's an interesting idea, and it trips over itself because it gets, like, they throw in needless bad like CG special effects, and just some corny, terrible dialogue. And that's one of the things too, is you have to have. That's why you have those kind of slim casts, is you really want to make sure that everybody kind of can carry that weight. Bobcat Goldthwait's Bigfoot found footage movie. Oh my gosh, it's gonna come to me in a minute. Is tremendous, and it's funny because it plays with your expectations and with the type of movie that Blair Witch is and those kind of movies. But it does so in a way that it takes it seriously. Like it has fun with it, but it never makes you feel as if he's mocking them. And it is Willow Creek, and it's fantastic, and it's great because it's a couple and they're out and they're doing a documentary about Bigfoot. So they go out looking for Bigfoot, and it's all done with sound and acting and tension, and there's so much done, and the ending is fantastic because of everything you've learned before. It's a bummer that the movie Wreck, which is so wonderful, REC, Wreck is in record. It's a Spanish film that was remade over here as Quarantine. The first two are tremendous movies, but that was one of the first ones I can remember where someone, is filming and they fall and you see the camera pointing at them and then they're dragged into the darkness. And you see that so often still, and it's so lazy. It just drives me crazy because it was effective then, but much like every ghost, it doesn't need to look like a long black-haired, woman or child with the open, yawning black mouth and black eyes, like, "Ugh." Like we've seen it in countless Asian films, Japanese horror films. We're good. Like, let's do something new. But it stinks because as I started to say, kind of like the neat thing about found footage movies are that it's just a tool. It is a way to tell a story. So however you tell that story is up to you. You can tell, we could shoot the same subject for a film any number of ways. It's up to you. It's how you want to tell that story. You can tell the story of a family. You can make it a western, a musical, a horror film, a comedy. It's a story about a family. Whatever you do with it, that's where you go from there. Found footage is just a way to tell these stories. It can be and it's kind of a cheat because again, you feel very immediate because you are in the film almost. But it can, so it cheats kind of a step or two where you're immediately engaged, immediately involved. But in that cheat, there comes an expectation. It's like, okay, cool. So I'm in the movie. I'm invested. Show me something, and it puts more pressure on the filmmaker to show something, like to make me feel as if I'm here for a reason. Make me feel like you earned this, and most of them don't. There are great ones out there. There are fantastic ones. Like I said. I should look up a list of just a partial list because it's great. And we watched one yesterday, which was so close to good. It stinks. Called The Resurrection, or The Possession of Michael King. Great idea. It is a father who is grieving the loss of his wife, and he's raising a young girl. And I guess he's a documentary filmmaker. From what you can tell, I guess that's what he is. Well, he decides that he's an atheist, and after losing his wife, he's going to make a documentary proving that God does not exist, that nothing supernatural exists, blah, blah, blah. So he goes out, and I just reviewed it, so I'm not trying to get too deep into the weeds here, but so he puts an ad out on the Facebook, on the internet, and like, hey, prove to me that demons are real, blah, blah, blah. And we go along the way there. Really interesting story, like really interesting. Like there's some great moments in it. Like the ritual stuff is fantastic, except again, so much stuff can be done in movies in general, but like where you can tell something with a few words, with like a moment, like it doesn't even take a full scene, but we go 0 to 60 real quick, where it's like I want to be possessed, and then he's already going to rituals to be possessed. Like to me, it seems like it'd be a little harder to find people that can legitimately introduce you to a demon. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's like a common thing and it happens all the time. I don't know. According to that movie, it's easy peasy, lemon squeezy. So maybe, what do I know? But it's really interesting, and then it just falls apart at the end. It's another one. It's one of those movies where it has kind of a weird soundtrack, a soundscape, which it shouldn't. Had they presented the movie as this is unedited, or this is this is footage that was not changed. This is blah 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 or whatever, however you want to do it. Like you can make a reason for that, and they didn't. And there's a moment that is corny as heck where he is filming himself and he's like, go on, la, prove you're here, roar. And he's filming himself and he's got all these cameras on him, and then next to him is a giant screen TV for some reason. And then, roar, the demon presents itself looking at like him. Like the image on the screen is him, and it's like all demon-y faced and kind of like, roar. And it's just so corny. And that's kind of where it goes with the movie. Like there's some really cool stuff, and then there's some super corny stuff, and then they didn't trust, they don't trust the audience for sure. And I kind of get it, because audiences are very lazy and kind of crappy at times, where it's just like, man, I don't understand what happened. Like everybody rushed out to see Blair Witch, but then years later, and it made all this money. It was the biggest grossing indie movie at the time. And then, of course, everybody hated it because that's how people are. Well, I hate it. It's stupid. I can get it. Whatever. So it's neat because, again, there's possession movies, there's ghost movies, there's alien movies, there's monster movies. Like you can do whatever you want with that mockumentary, faux documentary, found footage. You just kind of have to follow the tenets. Like if it is a faux documentary, like you have to have the interviews and kind of the research and this and that. You have to present it as if it is a documentary. You have to follow those basic guidelines, because there is a structure to documentaries, even if it's kind of like it's a loose structure. There's still a structure to them. If it's a found footage, okay, great. Who found it? Because if it's like, oh, this person, and they were doing stuff, and blah, 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 and then, oh my gosh, terrible things happen, and they were dragged off into the darkness by a demon, and then the camera's left running. Who found the footage? How did it make it to anything? How did anyone find it? Like, who edited it? Like, there needs to be a story as to this is what this is. Like, you could make a completely, like, almost a one take, as it were, found footage film, where it's one camera, one take. You could do it, but then again, you have to, like, who found it? Like, there's stories that there's questions that need to be answered. It's just part of it's part of the deal with those. A really cool, it's such a drag, because what you find too on some of these, Hell House LLC is so good, much like Grave Encounters. So good. Both of them are great initial films, and they felt the need to follow them up. And Grave Encounters 2 is awful, and Hell House LLC 2 and 3 are progressively worse and worse, and it stinks because the first one is so great. And the one movie I watched today, which was oh god, that I hate watched, which was about a couple that were doing a documentary. And I love that anybody kind of is just like, I'm gonna do a documentary. Like, they just kind of get a camera and, like, are documenting things, and they're making a documentary. It's weird. It's weird how you go zero to, I'm making a documentary. I'm not just documenting, I'm documentarying. But they're doing a documentary about the clown sightings of 2016. Interesting idea. Like, it's, that's kind of been played out to no end. But there's a kernel, like in most of these things, there's a kernel. It's a kernel of interesting there. And so there's something to kind of mine, but it is listless and rambling, and it says nothing, it offers nothing, there's no answers, no resolution really. It's frustrating. But Hell House LLC has a clown in it, a clown prop, we'll say, and it shows how scary clowns can be. And again, you can get into like Art the Clown from I forget the movie he's from. But there's movies. Haunt is another one where someone kind of dresses as a clown that's legitimately scary, not like Sid Haig kind of as a clown, but legitimately scary. So it's not even that clowns can they can be scary, but in these found footage things, it's can be again like the clown movie I watched today. It's super lazy. But Hell House LLC, it's so creepy and effective. So much of that movie just hits, and it's so good. And same thing with Grave Encounters, so good. And then they shouldn't have done follow-ups, and they did, and unfortunately, and it's cool because foreign markets have gotten into heavily found footage stuff. Like there's some great foreign films like Gunjam. I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's a haunted hospital or I think it's haunted hospital. That was really good. There's another one about kind of a curse that's really, really well done and super creepy. Noroi. Oh, super well done. Super creepy. And it's great when people do it right. And Noroi, both are kind of the faux documentaries, really. And they're just really, really effective and really well done. And that's the thing, is when they're done right, they are super powerful. Leaving DC still sticks. Like I still think about it, and it's so minimalist. But I still think about it. Same thing with Willow Creek, and certain movies and stuff. They stick with you because you are invested. And I watched so many found footage movies in general, and especially lately, and they're just so unmemorable. And that's most movies. That's most just direct to video horror and everything. It's hard to find that stuff. VHS 94, 84, like the newest VHS movie is really, really good. And I like that it's an anthology, it's found footage anthology. And they don't answer all of the questions, but since it's short form anthology, you don't necessarily have to. Like, who found it? Who did it? Who cares? I don't feel compelled to have everything answered. I found a full length feature. I do. And there's some really effective and really creepy ones. Poughkeepsie Tapes is another one that's just, ooh boy, that is some dark water there you're treading. So I'll always love these movies. I think it's great that there's, on the surface they seem so simple and so easy for anyone to get into and to try to make, but there's so much complexity involved. You have to have an actor that just brings it and that buys in and brings it, because so much rests on their shoulders. Because a lot of these movies, it's imagination again that gets into the campfire aspect that I really love, is that you are presenting all of these things but not necessarily showing them all, and that's so great and powerful. You have to be it's a lot of editing in these movies to make it make sense and keep it tight, and but yet keep it natural. A lot of sound design, a lot of locations scouting, so you have the right locations. A lot of writing, or at least kind of like the structure of a story. There's a lot that goes into these that, again, you just don't think about. And I think that, and they bring me back so much to my love of sitting around the proverbial or literal campfire and just telling these stories to scare one another. It's great. It's great. And there's something about things like that. My wife and I, we keep talking about doing a podcast about this stuff, but I don't know. She was doing an article once upon a time about a haunted hotel, purportedly haunted hotel from near where I live. And we had gone through it. We did all this, looked around, blah blah. She didn't feel comfortable. I was taking pictures. She was doing an audio recording. Do our thing. We talked to the manager and got a chance to look around the whole place and blah blah blah. On the way back to go see my family, we're listening to this recording, and we picked up another voice. She and I were alone, but we picked up another voice, and it's that kind of a thing where it's the oh my gosh, did you hear that? Did you see that? That's why a movie like Mungo is so powerful and sticks with you so much, is because it plays on with that on two different levels. The idea of the here's what's happening, and then like, but did you notice this? And then you're like, oh, I didn't see that, because that is horror. That is horror. That horror is looking at your security camera footage or a photo and seeing something that you know, like, and it looks like nothing has changed. It looks exactly like you expect it to look, and then you look closer, or someone else sees like, but wait, what's that? And then you see something that you didn't realize was there. You know, the old adage of no one likes a clown at midnight, and it's been dumbed down, I think, from the original kind of adage, as it were. But the idea that clowns are great in their setting and in their place, but standing in the middle of the road at midnight where they don't belong, at a time where they shouldn't be there, out of context, they're horrific. And that's kind of what makes horror, are these non sequiturs. And found footage, man, again, say you take 100 of them, you'll get 18 to 20 that are real good, and less than that are great. But man, when you find the really good ones, it is something else. It is something. There's a movie called, I think it's called Borderlands, which is another faux documentary, which is fantastic, about a case, you know, in the film, of mass murder in this town, and it's the way it's presented. Great stuff. Great stuff. There's a found footage zombie movie out there. Oh gosh, I forget the name of it. The first one, and again, it's another one of those where the first one is great, and then they made a sequel, and it was like, oh, man, like, oh, never mind. You know, and that's the problem, is a lot of these shouldn't be sequelized. As much as I love the Blair Witch kind of mythology, and I do love the Blair Witch, and kind of can appreciate Blair Witch too, a lot of them just should be what they are, and people can't help themselves because of money. But, you know, whether you love them or hate them, found footage is a great tool. It's a storytelling tool. It's a filmmaking tool. And much like everything else, we should look at it that way. Much, you know, kind of like the quick cut, actiony kind of horror comedies of the 90s, and, you know, like the kind of almost overwritten kind of 90s slasher kind of movies, which I love more than I should. But it's everything. It's all kind of tools in the toolbox, and just how you do things. You know, there's ways to do stuff, and I really like that kind of way. They don't all work, obviously, but for whatever reason, I keep going back to that well, you know, hooked on it, kind of like an addict, just trying to get that one good one again. And we're gonna try again tonight. I found one that I saw someone online rave about, so I'm gonna give it a chance. You know, we're gonna give it a try. We'll see what happens. But yeah, you know, it's again, and part of it's maybe, to wrap it up, part of my love of them and is the excitement of finding just these ones that I've never heard of or don't know what they are, because there's so many movies out anymore. You don't really hear of anything but like kind of the bigger titles, or the ones that kind of really get noticed. And it reminds me of the days of going down the video store aisle and finding those gems that you know, as a kid, I didn't really know what stuff was per se. So finding them and just being like, ooh, like when we saw Wreck, boy oh boy, it blew our minds. Those first two movies, the third and fourth aren't so great, but like, man, that just blew our minds. Like, those were something else. Kind of like, you know, when I first saw the first two Japanese Ju-on films, the made-for-TV ones, you know, when they my friend had gotten a bootlegs of them, and they're just you hadn't seen anything like that, and you're just like, oh, why is that little boy crawling around and all creepy, and the lady's meowing, and what's happening? Like, oh, it's just neat. It's neat when that happens, and I hope you have more times in your movie watching life, friend, that surprise you and that kind of get you that way, and it's like, ooh, give you kind of a chill. My name is Chris Ringler. This is the Spooky Chris podcast. You can find out more about me and my podcasts, my blogs, my reviews, my many, many books. I've written about over 20 books. And there's links to all of them on my website, spookychris.com. You can find everything there. I hope you are well and safe. I hope you have a wonderful Valentine's. So by the time you hear this, if you hear this, it'll be past. I hope you had a good Valentine's, whatever it meant to you. And I hope whatever footage you find is terrifying. Bye.